everybody. Please do feel free to move forward or come across. I'm going to be lurking here, so you might be lucky that you don't get to see my face. But anyway, as long as you're comfortable. I'm Michelle James. I am the HETV manager at ScreenSkills. Previously, I worked in Factent TV for 17 years, and I'm also a mum of two. So you can imagine that this panel means an awful lot to me. Today's event sets out to talk about practical steps that production companies can take towards making fundamental changes in how they recruit people who are returning after a break, and also improving the flexible working options they provide for our mostly freelance staff. This afternoon you'll hear from four amazing representatives from four organisations who are working hard to promote flexibility in the workplace for people with caring responsibilities. We've got, so I'll go from this way around, we've got Hope Dixon-Leach, who's the founder of Raising Films. We've got Lou Patel, who's the director of Share My Telly Job. This was one of the films we've just seen here. We've got Narain Kemp from Film London, and we've got Amy Walker from Media Parents. And Narain and Amy have both run return to work programs for us at ScreenSkills. So I'll be asking you for all your wisdom that's come off the back from that. As we know, the screen industries are unique in the way that they employ their workforce. You know, teams are mostly made up of freelancers. It's fast-paced contracts, working long hours in remote locations on tight schedules, but they manage to deliver fantastic programming. But it's this kind of pressure that so often forces out those talented freelancers when, you know, suddenly working full-time isn't an option anymore. Now, there are many reasons that people decide not to return to the screen industry, but most obviously, we're losing too much talent to the choice of being a parent or continuing your career. Raising Films has done a lot of research into this, and they describe it as family versus film. And it particularly affects women, although of course it applies to everyone. Raising Films research found that just 14% of women who work in UK film or television are parents, compared to 75% across the UK industry as a whole, which I think is quite a shocking statistic. They also found out that 79% of parents and carer respondents said that being a carer or a parent had negatively affected their career in screen. So we all know that women continue to struggle for representation both in front of and behind the screen. And the lack of support for those returning or those with caring commitments is a huge contributor to this. You know, we're an industry that seeks to hire the most creative people, but we're not thinking creatively about the way we hire, the way we develop, the way we retain talent. Supporting those wishing to return to the industry after a career break, or those who want to just work more flexibly, is of huge benefit to our industry. Quite simply, these people have talent, they have experience, they have drive that's too valuable to lose. With this panel, we want to start a conversation about what practical changes can be made for people working in film and TV, who want to have, you know, a work-life balance, and how they can have that and keep their careers. So it's about development, it's about sustainability, and of course, diversity. What we'll do is we'll keep your questions to the end. We've only got 2 mics up here, so Ryan will be dashing around. So if you have a question at the end, please raise your hand, wait for the mic to come to you. Please do make sure your phones are on silent, but if you feel the desire to tweet, live tweet, our hashtag is #DiverseScreen. Okay, so I'd like to introduce Hope Dixon-Leach. She's a founder of Raising Films. She's also an award-winning writer and director, and your debut feature, The Leveling, was released in 2017. Raising Films is an amazing organisation. If you don't know them, please check them out. They do so much great work. They're committed to campaigning for parents and carers in the film industry, and they're doing a survey about caring, which goes live today, I believe.
That's right. We have done 2 surveys already. Is that right? We did 1 survey and then we did 1 major report. The first survey we did was called Making It Possible, and it was the first survey that had ever been done for parents in the film industry, looking at the effect that being a parent had on your career. So it's a fabulous piece of information on our website, raisingfilms.com. And then last year we did a massive project survey called Raising Our Game, which was a big report in terms of how the industry can actually evolve and try and support and incorporate workers who are parents and carers and be better employers, better place to work. And I think one of the major things, obviously, we discovered was that really all the lessons that we learnt are lessons and all the tips, all the changes we can make will not just benefit parents and carers, but they will benefit all the excluded identities, all the excluded groups. And, so that report is about that. In your handouts, you also, in your bags, you have a handout, because one of the things we did was we created checklists for 4 different checklists, one for organizations, one for individuals, one for short-term employers, and one for standards and schemes, to look at the different work that they can do, all the things they can do to make sure they're hiring people lawfully, because that's something that we found is not happening. Anyway, just to jump back, that's what we do. We're a campaign, we're a community. We have this great website, raisingfilms.com, where you can go and have a look at everything we do, but we do a lot of research. We do data-driven research as well as qualitative research, so we're looking at experiences of people, testimonials, kind of, and things. We're solution-driven. We like to start by identifying problems, but really we're focused on how to make the changes. And one of the ways we do this is we publish and show stories of how people have actually pulled things off and try and learn lessons for that and take things out. So if you go forward, I think there you can see some of the stories we've done, some of the interviews we've done, and people can write in and talk themselves. And then we also do case studies. So there are some films where we may have multiple stories, multiple pieces of writing about different stages in that film's production in its life. And for example, one of them was, so there's Lorna's piece about a TV show she did, and another great project which Neil did. And then this was the job sharing, where on I, Daniel Blake, they job shared the assistant editor role. And so we have 3 pieces of work there. We have an interview with the producer, we have an interview with the editor, and then we have an interview with the 2 assistant editors. So you can see from 3 different points of view how that worked, what worked well, and things like that. So we're really trying to just make this kind of information available and provide that. We are entirely, we're a non-profit. We are all volunteers except for the 3 part-time staff we hired recently, thanks to a crowdfunder. So this is really a campaign and a community. We don't have the resources to do things, which is why we work with these other organisations, and we try and influence what people are doing. We make a lot of noise, and we try and start working with policymakers and with people who are providing the training and the opportunities to try and share all the information we've got and join the dots, basically. But that's our job isn't to deliver the training; it's kind of to make the noise about it. So that's what we do. Is there another one?
Absolutely, yes. So we've got this lovely...
So raising our game, yeah. So
can you tell us a little bit more about Raising Our Game?
So this was we had I think it was a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, we did a conference where we spent the morning with people from all different sectors of the industry, and we wanted to look at how we could better support parent and carer employees and staff in the different sectors. So obviously film is a huge, diverse, the idea of working in exhibition is incredibly different to working in production. And just so, one of the big reasons why we thought no one had talked about any of this was because it's very difficult to see how to begin. So what we wanted to do really was try and say, what are the things that they share? What are the things we have in common? How much, there we go, yeah. So there's, the things that we came up with was, we don't really have HR. Which is a massive problem in our industry. And a lot of people who are doing the hiring don't know the law. They don't know the legislation. They don't know the rights. And there is no accountability. So if people break the law and they hire people badly, they don't hire people properly, there is nowhere for anyone to turn to. And even places where they suggest you do go, people tend not to go because they then might not get hired for something else. Their reputation is ruined. So that is a massive problem there. Secondly, training schemes in education so far have not effectively increased diversity, which is not to undermine the work ScreenSkills are doing, but this has been going on for a long time. People have been trying to get more women in film for a long time. The numbers aren't changing. In film, we're back down to 4% of female directors again in the UK. It's really shocking, and these things are not enough. Language and discourse. So we looked at the fact that actually something as subtle and small as that are actually really important in terms of how we talk about diversity and inclusion, and so that changes the way we talk about things. We all know this. We know that changes in language changes the way that society functions. So it's the same with our industry. I'm actually moving towards the term representative rather than inclusive, because I think that maybe is... Anyway, developing the commercial case for diversity and inclusion, this is something we still have failed to do. We have failed to convince people that the broader stories, and this was 2 years old, so I think maybe with Crazy Rich Asians and, things have happened recently where people are suddenly going, oh, actually there is, but people are still massively risk averse. Captain Marvel, she just blew the box office out, didn't she, this weekend? So, these things are slowly happening. The question is, are the people who are working on these films, is it filtering down? Is it just this is the hot thing right now? So we really have to, those were the 4 themes that kept coming up again and again. Is there, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, and some lovely pictures.
No, there were things that went with them.
There are things.
They've gone, they've disappeared.
We don't have things, but
there
we
were
have
things
some
with them. Okay, never mind.
Great pictures.
Recommendations.
Yes, I was going to ask you about this. So these are this is almost like a checklist. Is this correct?
Yeah, well, so this is what we as a group cannot do everything. So we recommended that if the industry wants to get better, these are the things they need to do. So we do need a framework for accountability. After the Me Too, the Weinstein scandal emerged, we wrote a letter, actually, an open letter to the industry, and we had, I think, 500 industry figures signed it, asking for, a system of accountability, suggesting that there be an investigation and that there be tribunals and that there be a hotline and a place for people to go to if they, experience this, psychological safe spaces, all these kinds of things. We've had the FTC, the Film and Television Charity, have set up this helpline now, which is fantastic. Still no system of accountability, though. The BFI have put together these recommendations, for, all based around the idea of respect, which is great, but it's, quite frankly, if you're someone who has experienced harassment or abuse, I think you would probably laugh and say that's not going to stop the person who really wants to harass you. So we need that. We need formalised HR. We need, equality, duty and legal framework. Again, this is what the checklists are asking people to do. But most of these organisations, most of you probably know, you don't have the resources to have those. So where is that going to come from? And we've got to be more transparent. We've got to self-regulate, self-document. We've got to gather data. We've got to do all this stuff, because that's the only way we're actually going to know what's going on. And I've taken way too much time.
No, you've done absolutely brilliantly, and we've actually still got more time for me to talk to you.
Good.
So we can just chill.
Relax.
I wanted to ask, so you came up with these recommendations off the back of this research.
So we had that day, and then...
what reaction did you get from industry when you kind of presented this? I mean,
it was a 6 months worth of work. A woman called Dr. Dent, who used to work in the industry, and then she became a mother, and then she did a PhD. So she did a huge amount of research for this. We presented it. We had the people who came to the launch of the report. A lot of them were very receptive. A lot of them said, "Oh, my colleagues were complaining that I was coming." They were like, "Oh, it's that mother thing." There was a lot of that sort of thing. We were like, well, that's fine. But, we have a gig economy now. So essentially what you're looking at now is the whole country, employment legislation is going to be changing over the next 10 years. We are a case study for the country, for the future of employment. And actually we have a responsibility in a way, but we also have an opportunity to really to lead the way and do good practice. And there is some really, really invaluable information in this report. One of the things that happened, interestingly, was Screen over the summer, sort of 4 or 5 months later, Screen did a big thing about employment conditions. I think it was following the suicide of a location manager. They suddenly said, what is going on in our industry? Employment is not, and they did a whole thing about it. So it was really interesting how maybe there was a bias, like we don't want to talk about this if this is just about the mums, but this general realization that, the mental health and the health of the industry is at stake here, I think has meant that it's kind of sunk in a little bit. I know Beck2 have got their fantastic Eyes Wide Open campaign as well, which is, if you don't know about it, it's about trying to reduce the number of shooting hours to just keep people safe and healthy. So we've set ourselves up as noisemakers. That's what we're here to do. And it's about trying to follow through and see some of this stuff happening. But we made pledges at the end of this, saying what we would keep doing, which was what we're doing. But we're also asking people to do it. But I think there is a problem in that we don't have a system of accountability. We have individual unions, but unions were set up with a very different work structure in place. So unions, as wonderful, I'm a fully signed up member of my union, but they are not, they're working with an employment structure which is essentially becoming outdated now. And so what we need to do is say, how do we do this? Do we have a union of freelancers? Do we have, should there be a governmental or a creative industry kind of thing coming from Parliament saying, let's put together an HR system that if you're a small production company, a small business, you can sign up to that HR thing. The government will then, let's say, train someone in the organisation to be brought up. I mean, we're really thinking big here because I think this is the only way we can do it. It's got to happen at a huge level. I thought that question was really interesting about that. The student saying, how is this information going to trickle down? In my experience, it's going to have to trickle up because actually I think sort of new young people, they're much more engaged in a different way of working already.
Absolutely. And
it's the people at the top who are holding this up. So I think we have to find a way to educate the people at the top.
Absolutely. I mean, we were talking earlier, I think, about how, ideas of flexible working. One, it's not just about mums, but actually younger people coming into the industry, they expect an amount of flexibility in their working life. They expect to be able to work from home. They expect to be able to perhaps play in their band or do something else millennial that millennials do or something. And if employers aren't doing it now, they're just going to not attract the right talent. If you want to continue as an employer to attract the best talent, you need to make changes because otherwise you're going to be seen as dinosaurs.
Absolutely. I mean, I think people, the equipment is there. People are going to start making their own stuff. And the danger with that is that actually different work habits, they will then learn all these lessons again because then they will all set up their own companies and do their own things. And then suddenly they'll have children or they'll have an elderly relative to care for and they'll be like, oh, shit, we're not being paid. And you're like, there is a reason. For years we fought for all this legislation. There's a reason, there's a history of unions and why we fought for these rights. And I think it's really important that we evolve that rather than, burn it down and just start again because there's so much we know. There's so much work that's been done. But we're now at the point where we have to go, okay, we need a systemic change. We need that to happen. But we must not also pretend that there's nothing good has ever been done before.
Absolutely. So for you, off the back of all your research, sort of what are the top 3 things, the first 3 things that any employer can do to kind of start, what's the starting point for them to start making themselves more open to?
Well, they need to know all their legislation. They need to, follow the checklist. They need to be well educated themselves, and they need to hire people properly. So they need to have proper hiring practices. They need to have contracts. They need to be, proper chain of command in any kind of environment. I think, if hiring practices were changed, I think that would change a huge amount in the industry. No to NDAs, none of that stuff. Let's stop trying to sweep bad behaviour under the carpet. Let's just try and set up a world where there's good behaviour built in. It has to happen. And if there aren't, then those people, there are consequences, there are answers, So I think proper employment practices, because we're dealing with a casualised workforce and it's, it's unacceptable. I mean, that's a big one.
Yeah, that's the big one, right? And I think
everyone gets paid. That's my second one because, that is a huge problem. A lot of people work and don't get paid in this industry, and it's exclusionary on so many levels for so many different groups of people, and it just shouldn't happen in an industry where people are making so much money. Some people are making so much money, and most people aren't. But nobody should make no money. And just don't be a dick. That's my general.
Yes. On that perfect note, I think that's great. So absolutely. So we're great that employers can start looking at what you're doing. Hopefully they're already on board. Please look at the handouts that you've got in your bag. I'm actually going to skip you for a minute, Lou. I'm going to come to Narain. So Narain is...
I can't go after that.
Yeah, well, no, but we're going to go to sort of like some of the sort of practical things that we're trying to do. So Noreen works at Film London, and she has been doing our most recent Return to Work program, mainly focused in post and VFX. And I was with you last week for an amazing roundtable where we met 11 people who are returning to the post and VFX, and they got to talk about their experiences. We got to talk to employers about how to make it easier. But tell me a little, first of all, I'm talking too much. Tell me about what you've been doing and what your experiences of the Return to Work program have been so far.
It's been really amazing, actually. We did the first one in 2017 where we actually took 6 parents, and it was the first pilot that we did. And it was pretty amazing, actually. Raising Film supported us in terms of getting the word out, so we had amazing applications from a lot of people. And what we realized quite early on is that you have to have company engagement first. So there's no point finding the parents because they're out there and they want to come back to work. So going to each company, so we had people like Carnival Films, Tiger Aspect, Cuba Pictures, Molyneux, and we just went, okay, if we came to you and said, here's a returner as opposed to an intern, 4 weeks, we're going to pay them through ScreenSkills, actually funded the first pilot. And it was amazing because they're like, yeah, where do we sign? You're giving us someone who's experienced, someone who's been in through 15 years, they've just had a break, so actually bring them in. So every company had like a different wish list going, okay, like say Tiger Aspect said, give us someone in development, Carnival, like, okay, production coordinator would be ace. And the minute we got the companies involved, everything changed. And it was like, okay, if this can work, it's a practical solution to go, look, here's some amazing people, put them forward. And all these parents who day one were like kind of slightly kind of hunched and had no confidence, by week 4 they were like, I'm ready for the world. And it was super satisfying to see. I do a lot of work with new entrants, and it's amazing how you feel very wise, and you're like, I'm giving you information, and this is how you do it. But with these returners, they're my peers. They're people who I've, they're my age group or whatever, and, they've got similar backgrounds to me, and I'm going, oh my God, this is us about getting together and helping each other, and it just felt really satisfying. I don't know, they were all like super cool to each other. They became a peer group, and all 6 found employment, and they're still working in the industry, which is super cool. And then this year we got funding again to do the scheme again for post and VFX. And again, I was like, go straight to Molyneux, Blue Bolt, everyone, and go, look, we're going to find someone. Who do you want? And it's been amazing. They all came, right, I want a compositor. Some of that, I want a VFX producer. During the application process, we selected people to put forward. They were getting hired like that because suddenly they'd done their CV.
You couldn't keep
again.
hold of them, could you?
No, they were literally getting jobs, which was a point. I know, which was a point, but I was like, oh, how disappointing. Anyway, so 3 of them actually during the process got jobs, so they dropped out, and we still had like another 10 people, and they're all at places now, Jellyfish Animation and Outpost in Bournemouth. So some really cool companies. And all of them, again, are like, we totally get it. And I think once you get the companies on board, that's when it becomes real. Because we can run schemes so you're blue in the face, but if companies don't engage, there's absolutely no point. So for me, it's always about the company first, industry first, then kind of go, right, here are the people.
And I mean, what you've been saying just then makes it sound very rosy. Like, oh yeah, the companies were... And actually, that was the lovely thing on that Friday, because I think it takes such a short amount of time for you to lose your confidence. I think as somebody who's gone out of, within 6 months, you're like, oh, I don't know any of the, especially in post VFX, I don't know any of the tech, I don't know, everybody's moved on, they won't remember me. But I think they were all quite surprised by how much the production companies like, no, we need your experience, you're so much cheaper to skill up than a new entrant. So they were all very on board, but did you find that there were employers that you were having to convince? And if so, what was your kind of big pitch, your sell point for these people?
I think the pitch was always, look, we can find you the people. We know they're out there. Just give us what your kind of wish list is. And the minute we kind of engage with companies like that, and also going, it's not one size fits all. So, if one company's saying, I want a VFX editor or compositor, and someone else going, no, I just want a post-production supervisor. So being a bit more flexible in how we were recruiting was, I think, the key as well. So you're not kind of, I always find, because I do a lot of work with kind of inclusion and schemes and all that, I always think the problem sometimes you get people dictating to you about inclusion and diversity, and it's really annoying. And having been a producer, when someone goes to you, you've got to do this, it's so irritating, because you're like, I'm trying to get finance, I'm trying to crew up, and now you're going giving me demands. So it's always, for me, it's like you have to be like someone going, look, I get it, I empathize, let me take away that risk from you. So I always take that on as a way of kind of getting what I need, which is I'll take it on, let me do the wiring and find you the right person, and I can help you, the company. So I feel, why shouldn't, I've got a lot out of this industry. I love this industry, and I'm kind of very passionate about it. So I'm kind of like, I get where people are coming from when they're saying, I don't have resources to hire like this, like that. And if I go, no, I'll help you, that's kind of quite fun for me. I kind of like the challenge of finding the right person for them.
Absolutely, and I think that's at the heart of a lot of programs that we do at ScreenSkills, is sort of taking that risk away from employing somebody who doesn't look like you, who doesn't have the same experience with you, didn't go to the same school as you. I mean, we're all, I think the industry as a whole is very guilty of that kind of thing. So it's about taking that risk out, so they go, oh, actually, look, Nareen's found me somebody, and oh, look, ScreenSkills are letting them do this, and suddenly it becomes a whole lot more manageable. What I really enjoyed when we were talking was we were talking about, okay, you've got these amazing returners, you found somebody you want to employ. I mean, Molinaire's kept both of their returners on, which is absolutely fantastic. But how can we then make it practical for that person to come and stay? A lot of them were parents. What other things can we put in place? Maybe is it flexible working times? Is it a job share? I remember, what was her name? Yes, somebody had come saying, I want a job share, and she panicked. I can't remember quite what the situation was on that.
That one, is it Lee Raby who worked 20 years ago in the job share at Frame Store?
No, but it was the employer, the lady who was sat next to me.
Yes, I think with a lot of employers, I think it was the idea of having two people doing one job. They kind of like, how would that work? And what the person, I think, who's not on the scheme actually, but said, look, if I bring someone of my same ability and I'll do the recruiting of that person, I take away the panic from you. So she was like, okay, then I don't have to do any work. So I think, it's kind of giving the company a bit more. They're not the one doing the recruiting for your kind of job share double, which I'm sure you'll talk more about job shares. It's not my background. But yeah, so I think it's just a listening thing, isn't it?
And what I loved about that was that actually the job sharing became a massive solution for her problem, because she was working with America. And so they were needing basically somebody to be there 24 hours a day. So actually, it worked for the job sharers because they weren't doing like crazy hours. But actually, she just had somebody there all the time. So it was perfect. And I think somebody did half the 12-hour shift each, and it kind of worked out for everybody. I think I was going to sort of ask you, I mean, what are sort of what are the kind of issues that returners, when they were coming to you, said they were quite low in confidence?
I think it's just that thing of when you've had a break for more than a year. A lot of them had like breaks for 5 years, and that's a massive gap for any job actually, no matter what industry. And I think when you've lost your confidence, even doing an application becomes such a big deal. So I think they were quite panicky in the cover letters and kind of explaining the gaps. That's the other big thing, kind of going, not explaining exactly why they had a 2-year gap, which is, okay, you had a kid. I mean, I was like that when I returned. I was like, oh God, how do I explain this gap? And, I was on the Women in Film and TV, I think, the first mentoring scheme. And I remember I had Pat Young as my mentor, and he's like, why have you got a gap? And I went, I had a child. He's like, and why are you embarrassed? And I said, I don't know. And it's one of those things that when I was working as a producer, you just kind of, all the women who were having kids would come in for like 2 more months after having their kid, and they'd disappear again. And I'd be like, oh, they've all gone. So I was kind of in my own head, that culture of don't talk about your children became what I was part of. And the minute Pat Young told me that, I was like, oh yeah, it's okay. And then be able to go, yeah, that's why I had a break. He goes, yeah, look, an employer will go, why have you got a break? What's wrong with you? Why are you not working? They'd rather know that you had a child, or you had to look after an elderly relative. So yeah, it's been fun.
And I think it's exactly what one of your trainers, when I came in for that training day, she was like, okay, it was almost like, what's your elevator pitch? Like actually helping those returners to go, okay, who am I? What do I want? How to explain that gap in a way that is actually positive and empowering. I've got amazing time management skills. I'm super devoted. I will get stuff done on time because then I have to go pick up the kids, or then I've got to go and look after my mother, or then I've got to go and learn the violin, or whatever. So it's just knowing that that's actually, if you can change it and say, actually this means that I'm going to be super dedicated. I think so. I think that's great. And I think I think they got really a lot out of that. And then for the production companies, their big thing was actually we need those skills. I mean, talk to that about why they were kind of involved with the program.
With the second, with post and VFX, it was very much going, look, there's a massive boom going on in our industry right now, especially in film and TV, So they are desperate for people, and they don't have time to look for people. So if someone's going, here you go, here are 11 people or 10 people who are just need a bit of tweaking, and they're ready for you, why would you say no? It's like kind of what the great thing about our industry is, yes, we've got a lot of issues and problems, but we are in a state of a boom, and it's never been more exciting to be in the film and TV industry. When I meet new entrants, I'm so excited for them. When I meet returns, I'm like, this is the best time ever.
Yeah.
There's so much production going on in London, all over the UK. Why shouldn't people be coming back and go, yeah, I want to come back in again? Because, we could be working anywhere, but we all chose film and TV. So it's a cool industry, and, we should be encouraging everyone to come into it right now, because we need crew. We need, BFI report, 2020, what is it, 10,000 new people needed by 2020? That's ridiculous.
Yep.
But they're out there. Just have to get them back in.
Absolutely. So I want to actually bring Amy in at this point, if that's okay, just for a little minute, just for a chat. So Amy, obviously, you probably know she runs Media Parents. You've also done a return to work program for us. They launched the 2010 Women in Creative Industries report. You work with more than 2,000 TV employees. More, I would say, than that at the moment.
No, employers.
Employers,
Yeah.
right, employers. I was
Yeah.
to retain talent and to bring people in. So, I wanted to kind of ask you, when you were doing your return to work, and actually in all the work you do with Media Parents, how do you get employers to kind of get in, to kind of say, yes, we want a part of that? Have you found it difficult?
No, I feel very much the same as Noreen, actually, that if we go to companies and say we're going to bring some brilliant experienced talent to you, and we're able to fund or part fund what they're doing for you, they're just throwing their arms around us and saying thanks very much. I suppose for this to be useful, I'm sure that it would be useful for you to have funded people on placement with you. For this to be useful for you, maybe I should talk a bit about things that are difficult for us to manage.
Yes.
And have to put in context that we worked only regionally on the returners scheme that we did. We had 90% women, and we had, I think, 35% diverse people on the scheme, which was great. They were quite difficult to find regionally. So if you're regional and you're looking to find people, get in touch with us. We have a big UK-wide network. We can put out specific shout-outs. I think all of us potentially can do that kind of thing. Raising Films is brilliant on social media. So, and a lot of what Media Parents does as well is on social media to try and find those hard-to-reach people. The more specific sometimes the job description that you need, the easier it is for us to find people, because we can put out a very clear message to our networks. What else can I say? The hidden thing that I suppose scuppered us, we had 100% success rate on our other scheme that's run for 6 years, bringing people back into work. We don't claim to have that with this one, and I think that was about mental health. So my response to that has been to book myself into a mental health first aid course. I don't know if you probably all know about those. There are various types, 1 day, 2 days, belt and braces. I wanted the tools to be able to speak to people clearly, to ask questions that weren't going to offend, to then be able to speak to employers and say, this is coming towards you, how are you going to deal with it? You need extra support in that situation. I think it's something that freelancers, encounter because they're largely isolated, particularly if they're out of work. You talked about somebody out of work for, I think, 5 years or something. It's pretty standard. So we've just returned somebody not connected with mental health, but she had not directed for 13 years. She's back in now, directing Call the Midwife, and I think you probably worked with her as well, Kate Cheeseman. Yeah, it's a brilliant achievement.
Amazing.
But it is a force of will to say, I'm going to stand up in front of actors and direct people after that amount of time out. She had been doing her own projects. She took absolute responsibility for herself and her route back in. But I would really encourage everyone to, within your workplace generally, get informed about mental health and mental health first aid. It's huge. I'm also working with Bournemouth University, and we're seeing the number of issues related to mental health massively rising. We don't know why. Maybe it's social media, the flip side of social media. but it's coming, and we need to manage it and be aware of it, start talking about it.
Really interesting. And sort of talking to that sort of changes that recruiters can make in order to kind of support people returning to work. You know, what else are we talking? You know, are we talking creches? Are we talking a more openness to talk about flexible work? I mean, I think I think Raising Films talk a lot about normalising the conversation about caring, about the commitments that you might have. I mean, is that something that you think employers need to get on board with?
Another thing that Raising Films does, I don't know if you're still doing it, which is brilliant, is offers a bursary to help people with their childcare when they're coming back in.
That's the Film and TV charity.
Yeah, and it was so important for our returners because that money wasn't really in the budget for us. So that really helps. I think if you can have a conversation about flexible working, job share, what can you offer? Another of the things is, excuse me.
Sorry, I'm making you work very hard.
I was a bit not expecting it.
Sorry.
I don't know what I'm sitting here for if I wasn't expecting that, but anyway. Yeah, so the other thing that you can do, I think, is make a noise about what you are prepared to offer flexibly. So the way we approach that at Media Parents is we tell people to come to you and ask for flexible working and tell you how they can make it work, because I think that many employers don't work flexibly already. And so if somebody can present a solution to you, that's probably more useful. You might adapt that. What I think is really useful is giving people, if it's returners, give people a list of questions that you might ask them at an interview, because we already heard from Noreen about people panicking about job applications and interviews. Why not just give them a head start, you know? And I think that that's the same in the case of flexible working. If somebody's coming for an interview, can you give them a schedule in advance? You know, then they can think about how they can make that work for their family and offer you some solutions.
But isn't it also, I mean, I think definitely that it's for the employee to come forward and say, this is how I can make it work. But it's also, I think, for the employers to have a look at your roles that you've got coming up. Think what actually could be how can I make these roles more flexible? Advertise them as this is be a flexible role. This could be a job share. You know, actually, you know, it doesn't have to be every role, but just kind of go, actually, maybe, you know, this edit producing role, that could be a job share. This, you know, this production coordinator, actually, we could have 2 people on that, or you know, and it's about just being a little bit more open and a bit more welcoming. I think it's quite intimidating as a freelancer to kind of go into a job and then kind of go, I'd actually really like to job share this one, or I'd actually, is it okay if I leave early on Fridays? Because it's really intimidating. But if you're actually kind of open and allowing and welcoming that kind of interaction, I think.
Yeah, and what we encourage people to do, companies to do, is write for our blog, come to our events. So I don't have any slides to show you, but I was going to ask you to look at mediaparents.co.uk. And on our blog, you can scroll down the blog and see what we're doing with our events. You can see who's there. At our job share event last year, Tiger Aspect, who've come up already, were there. They've heavily influenced us. So what we do, we run our company as a job share. So we have one single inbox. We respond so that everybody can see who's writing to who. I have to say, if you get an email from the Amy phone, that really is me, but it could also be somebody else writing as me to keep the continuity of the relationship. So we want you to feel that you're in safe hands all the way along, and everybody who works with us works part-time and hands over. I think, though, my main point would be get out there and tell people that you will work flexibly. So come to events, write for the blog, shout about it on social media, because then freelancers, the best freelancers really, will feel empowered to come and talk to you.
That's great, thank you. And then, Noreen, I'm sorry, I missed all your slides. And oh, that's right. I'll just put this on there. That's Amy. That's Noreen. I just wanted to come back to you and sort of say, for a post, obviously you've been looking at post and VFX more recently. You know, what sort of things do you think? I think we sort of talked about post and VFX being actually an industry that it has a stable. Normally, you have a stable location of work. You have fairly stable hours, unless there's some like mad panic in the edit last thing. But it's a side of the industry that's perhaps more open than most for job shares. But what kind of came through from you? For what can those companies do to kind of make themselves more open to flexible working or job sharing?
I mean, we basically went to them first and said, look, this is going to be a part-time role. Every parent or carer who's coming to do the scheme will do 3 days or 2 days, basically. And all the companies were like, yeah, totally get it. And then each returner, when they went for their interview, they got selected, then they were told, right, what are the hours you want to do? So a lot of them said, oh, can I do the school drop-off and start at 10? They're like, fine. Someone went, can I leave at 3? Yeah, I'll start at 8. Like, yeah, fine. So it's kind of already, because they're part of the scheme, they were listening to those kind of requests and going, get it, totally understand. One said, okay, you could do, a positive was like, okay, you can work 1 day from home. So kind of, they've all kind of come up with their own little schedules. So
it is possible.
Yeah,
so
totally.
these kind of things are possible. And
You have to ask.
you have to ask for it, but also companies need to not be frightened of doing it or thinking that it's like a massive big palaver to kind of do it. They need to just
I think they've got very supportive MDs, actually. I think that's where a lot of them are parents or carers or who've been through it. And I think they're the ones who've really got it. They're like, yeah, no, I was there 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So they're much more sympathetic to the situation of each returner. That really helps.
Interesting. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to Louise Patel from Share My Telly Job. So obviously, Lou, I think you kind of come from a little bit sort of similar background to Hope. You're kind of a bit more of a campaigny kind of, you're like the whippersnapper, but very much kind of coming from a part where it's happening to you. So tell me a little bit about how Share My Telly Job came about and what you want to do with it.
So it came about, I've got 2 children, 4 and 2. So after my first child, while I was pregnant, I landed a job on Big Brother, job sharing as a director. No, it wasn't job sharing. There was a job share. I got pregnant as soon as I started that job. So I had my eyes on the job sharing job. So I went back to direct and the show, I can't remember, the whole series, as a job share. When my daughter was 5 months old, and I kept on to that. I went back 2 series each year. It's brilliant. It was shift patterns, so there was no handover. It was a live show, so it worked perfectly. So then I decided I wanted to go back into the edit and go and PD, produce, and go and do the stuff that I used to do. And I couldn't get in, so I just couldn't get in. I sent 27 applications, and I didn't get a single email back, nothing, from people that I knew, people that I worked for. So yeah, I just got a little bit angry, and that's probably what fueled the whole thing, really. So, and I've done a job share, it works, So, and I was going to people, and I was trying to talk about how do I sell it in, because a lot of people say to me, no, it's not something that we go for, it's something that we want to be in control of. That annoyed me, and a lot of people, kind of, the people who were job sharing had been at a company for 5 years, 10 years, it's kind of a loyalty-based thing, yeah. So staff have access to that. It's a legal right if you are staff at the BBC. It's your legal right to go to them and talk about flexible, the right, you want to work flexibly. And it's, legally they have to listen to that, but nobody has to listen to a freelancer. So, yeah, that's where it came from, really. And then I don't really know the next step. I think, then they had the idea of, how do we get freelancers, people who have been out of the industry, and the confidence has gone. My confidence disappeared, and nobody really helped me get that back because I didn't have anywhere to go. So, so it's trying to get that community together of people like me, people who needed flexible working, who couldn't work without it, because I certainly couldn't go back to work full time. It's just not an option. So, I thought, let's get this dating site together so like people can go and, from all over the industry and can kind of meet each other through the dating site. Because even with kids, it's hard to go. It's hard to go for, if I go for an interview, it's a day I need childcare for. If I want to go for a coffee with someone, it's, I've got to sort out the childcare. So, it was this online community that it's going, it's working quite well. And then obviously we bang the drum, really, and we go to employers and we kind of challenging employers. But I think, what we're trying to do is just improve working rights for freelancers. So whether on, parents or everybody needs this right to work work flexibly. So that's where we're at. We just shout a lot.
Well, it's good. It's good to shout because nobody hears. But I think what I like about what you're doing is sort of job sharing is kind of a practical solution to the fact that there doesn't seem to be part-time work in the industry, and so it's sort of a very tangible way you can say this can work.
I think the issue was there were so many full-time jobs out there available to freelancers who were could commit to a full-time role. So that was making me angry as well, was, why can't I apply for that job? But if I had a job share, I tested it a few times, and I wouldn't tell anyone that I'm applying as a job share. So I would go and I would engage, I would hook them in and start the conversation and just say, look, would you be open to a job share? And that's, so it worked a couple of times, and I think, for me, for a lot of freelancers that I know, like, part-time work is essential. Like, we cannot come back to the industry without a part-time job, and there are no part-time jobs. And this is the perfect practical solution to that. And it we do it and it works, and I don't know any other solution really.
Yeah.
For freelancers.
And so, what's the kind of reaction that you get from employers when you're saying, when you turn up with your mate and you're like, okay, we want to job share this role? What's the first reaction you get? Is it embracing? Is it sheer panic?
If it's going to be a yes, it's a yes straight away, and there's no question. So we 3 years ago, we you just have to be confident about it. 3 years ago, I wouldn't have sent the email. So last week, we applied for 2 jobs with a new job share. I've never actually shared with her, but our CVs are really well matched, and we know that we'll work well together. So we just go in. It's like, I don't work full time. I work part time. This is what we do. And this is how we do it. You don't need to get involved in the details. So, and that's it. So it's just having that confidence. It's like, and nobody can really question it. So, so that's kind of,
So it's about having a sort of coming with a solution rather than a problem. So I have here how to employ job sharers. So how do you start? I think, how do you start?
Just go to the next one, 'cause I can't remember.
I'll just get them all up. Hang on.
Yeah, that's better.
Hang on.
Yeah, so I think,
There.
Okay, yeah. So I think for employers, I think the first thing to do, we were talking about this earlier, it's that if you look at if you're in an indie and you have a look, so many people are probably already working flexibly. So if somebody leaves at 2:00 on a Friday, or someone comes in at 10 after the school drop off, that's flexible working. So it's probably happening all over the company, but people aren't aware of it. So I think you just need to take the complication out of it. It's like, you're going to hire somebody, but you're hiring the 2 best people. You're not going to hire one person. You're not taking a risk. There are no risks. You're hiring 2 people. If there were 2 full-time jobs, you would employ those people. So put them together, and you're just going to have this amazing combination of, of enthusiasm and grit, and, and I think, and I think this is really from Raising Films, is invite the conversation. Like, once people start confidently talk, allowing people to talk about, you've got children, about drop-offs, about pickups, about, can I kind of change the way I work on a Friday? I think I found the more confident I become, like I do start the conversation, but I think you have to pick and choose really. So I think it's, and if you want to do it, I think it's difficult. If a company wants to do it, usually we'll find out the production manager is on board, or someone in the HR team is on board, but then they have to go and convince everybody else to do it. So they might convince this program's series producer or exec to do it, but then they go, or that what happened last week is a big company. They were like, look, we're on this, we've been banging the drum. The PM was just like, she was so for it. She was like, we're going to open up the edit to job shares, and we're going to employ job sharing edit producers. So it was even advertised. So, people were really excited. Everybody was texting about it. And then the exec came in and changed his mind. So it just wasn't something that he wanted to do. So, not saying it, so it's really difficult. I think it's like, if you commit to flexible working or job sharing, then the company has to commit to it, but then you have to make that commitment to train transient staff. I think there's so much to talk about really. I think it's what do you go for if you're specifically going to go for a job share? We come to you and tell you how it works, but then I think you need to make your expectations as an employer very clear. It's like, this is going to have late nights, or, we want you to be there. We want both people to be there when there's a viewing, or everyone has to talk about it, and it will work.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's,
It's about setting something up to succeed, I guess.
Yeah.
So, making it all clear. And I think the thing is when you talk to employers, this industry, it's very fast paced. Oh, I've only got a week to crew up, or I'd love to help you out, Lou, but I just don't have time, so I've just got to employ the person that I know. It's about going, don't panic. As you say, it's not a massive risk. It's no more risk employing 2 incredibly experienced people than there is 1, and almost kind of it's not a charity case to employ a returner or to employ, it's not like, oh, we'll do something nice for the returners. It's actually, sorry, but it's incredibly beneficial to your company. I mean, maybe you could tell us a little bit about, what the awesome things are about employing job sharers.
So, I mean, I think people work so hard. There's people, as a job share, I know I did 5 back-to-back job shares last year for 9 months, and I've never worked so hard in my entire life. I worked so hard. I always had someone to turn to. So if there was ever a problem or issues that arise quite frequently in the edit, these were, quick turnaround, 4 new formats, 1 huge Saturday night entertainment show. So, you have someone, you've got, someone has your back, you've got an ally, you've got somewhere to go to talk about that decision, or, there's always someone, you've got your mate, you're sharing with your friends. So there's that, you've got two minds rather than one. You've got 2 creative influences, you've got the best. I can't really sell it enough, but you've also, we can cover holidays, so you can cover time off, if somebody needs a break from the edit, you've got that flexibility between the 2 of you to make sure that somebody can do the extra hours, or, there's less stress on that freelancer because somebody else is there to pick up the pieces. So rather than me going and doing a 6-week job full time and everything falling apart at home, or not going to a wedding, or not going to certain things, you're just getting 2 less stressed people who can give more to the production. So so you have that, you don't, it's supporting people coming back to work, but it's not that different. You are employing 2 brilliant people as you would normally. So I think that's it as well. It's, there's not much of a difference apart from you get to less tired. Yeah.
Someone who doesn't, I don't know very much about this, and I don't work in telly, so I'm like, but if I was an employer, one of the things I would be concerned about is if I have to pay more, because there's an overlap, and I'd also be worrying about things like pension contribution. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? So how do you deal with that?
So there's absolutely no extra cost at all. So Nat and I would go for a job share, literally, if people are on board, you get the job, and that is it. So all you have to do as an employer is send out 2 contracts, and you have to raise 2 payrolls, and that's it. We invoice on a day rate. So it depends on what job we're doing and how tired we are or what we've got on at home. Sometimes I'll do 2 days, she'll do 3. We flip-flop a Wednesday. We sort the week out between us. Nobody needs to know. It makes no difference as long as the job gets done. And then we invoice on a daily basis. So we agree a weekly rate, and that's that. And that's it, the day rate. So what you find is the more senior level of job sharers do have that crossover, and you'll usually find that there's 2 ladies I'm going to talk about in a moment, actually, but staff positions. So I went to them, it's a very delicate question to ask the heads of ITV Daytime how they negotiated their pay rate. But
you asked
them. And I did, yeah. I did, yeah. So, in that case, it's better for those women who've got 50 years worth of experience to stay at ITV. ITV are prepared to pay that extra day each week for them to have that handover, because it's a huge job, rather than them leave to go to the BBC. That's their homegrown talent, and they're prepared to do that because they realise what they get with these 2 women. So, or 2 highly experienced people. So, but I think at a freelance basis, nobody will pay extra. So there are 2 job sharing PDs that I know allocate. They're on the film, and they forego a researcher so they can have a handover day. So they've been job sharing as directors on they make BBC Horizon programme. So they've been doing that for 5 years, and they actually decide not to have that researcher. So that budget goes to them being able to have that overlap. So it works. If the company doesn't want to pay, then they don't have to. If you want that crossover, then there's ways. You have to think flexibly if you want to employ flexibly, because the 2 people or 3 people that you are employing will do whatever they can to make it work. So that's it. Yeah.
I'm going to do this. Actually, maybe I can come to you quickly, Amy, as well. So
Always.
I'm just keeping on your toes here. So obviously, because your events, you also do a number of events which are sort of pairing job sharers together. I guess you do, as in media parents, you pitch those job sharers to companies.
No, we ask them to pitch themselves.
Okay,
so
interesting.
There's only so much we can do.
So maybe you can tell me a little bit about, are there any kind of success stories? I mean, I know you know Aliki as well, which are 2 of the people who were on the video earlier.
Yeah. So actually what we do is for job share events, we try to get as many people in the room as possible. So we make everything open beyond our network because Lou's already called it a dating site. It is really about finding your perfect match, and hell, who knows, it is a numbers game, isn't it? So essentially, we get loads of people in a room together. We also try and involve employers so that those conversations can start in the room, so that people can hear who's doing what and how. Since last year's, I don't know if I said it earlier, since last year's flexible working job share event that we ran, Tiger Aspect have advertised every single one of their roles as a possible job share.
That is amazing.
Which is brilliant,
That's
isn't it?
really cool.
You know, we need more employers to do that, and I absolutely promise that the more people that do that, the better talent will come knocking on your door, because it's just a total joy. Was there anything else? Oh, I wanted to say a bit more about different roles. I hope I'm not stepping on your territory, but you were talking about job sharing in edit and also flexibility in post, which is brilliant and it's needed and really important. I've job shared as a PD, and when people said it couldn't be done because creative job shares can't work, so I don't really believe that. It worked really, really well, and also as a series producer. So I think what you need is the buy-in of the exec and the production exec, so that you can make the money work, make the rates work, and the person who's creatively responsible for the programme trusts you.
I mean, I don't see why. I mean, if it was for me, series producer is such a stressful job. Like, all series producers should just job share, whether they've got kids or not. I mean, this is
Right.
like, it seems like a complete no-brainer that you've got another person to share that incredible pressure with,
Yeah.
and another mind to problem solve
Yeah,
with.
and you're not tired. It's a joy to go into work. You know, you're not thinking things that you shouldn't be thinking when you're exhausted. You know, you're just problem solving all the time. And ultimately, all of us are in telly or film because we're problem solvers, right? That's what we do on a daily basis. So why don't we do it more in this sphere?
Can I just possibly be the negative person in
Please.
the room? I'm just aware that women are often perceived as risky hires anyway.
Yes.
So the idea of hiring two women is you know,
Heaven
even
forbid.
riskier. Do you know what I mean? And I do think that is kind of, certainly I work in film. I don't work in telly and factuals. I don't know what any of these words mean, but I do, obviously. But you know, I do. You know, we have a sexist industry anyway, and so I think that's one of the things that we really are aware of at Raising Films, is this idea that basically we're talking about logistical challenges which we're presenting to an already biased sexist
But
industry.
we're also solving them.
Oh, no, I totally agree. I know from our point of view, that it's better for us, it's better for the job, you know. But unfortunately, the people who are the ones who are going to be biased against us already are going to have those, you know, that it's going to add. And so it's also, as well as provide, which is why we have to do the work, because actually, ideally, these organisations get educated through these experiences, and they advertise, you know, constantly going forward like that. But for the people who haven't been educated and haven't had that experience of positive job sharing, you know, they retreat. We all know that everybody says no much more easily than they say yes. Yeah. So we are doing the work at the moment. We are having to do that work of finding the date, and you know, kind of there's a lovely golden age somewhere in the future where companies are actually, you know, saying, oh, well, we've got this person, but she doesn't want to come back full time. We'll go out and find the perfect match for her, you know, or whatever. And right now that's not going to happen, which is why we have to do this work. But I like to think that that's the dream that we're moving towards.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think the more conversations and the more companies are doing this, the more times you go out and you know, you shout, and we, you know, it becomes a just something to consider. Even like at the moment, I don't think it's even in some employers' brains to even think about something being a job share. You know, but it has to change. You're losing so many incredibly talented people at sort of mid-30s, and off they go.
Yeah.
And how can you tell the right stories if it's all made by the same people?
But also it's economically irresponsible because they've invested so much money in training up this industry, you know, and you're just throwing it all away.
Absolutely.
So, you know, there's a real argument there. Sorry, Amy.
I just wanted to bring it back to something that Seetha said earlier, which is that we need role models. So the more companies that see somebody as job sharing or working flexibly, the more companies will feel empowered to offer it.
Absolutely.
So we need to get the word out ultimately.
And we were talking earlier, if you are job sharing or you are working flexibly, let everybody know about it. Don't
Yeah,
be
yeah.
ashamed. You know, I think that's one thing we always sort of talk about. You were saying you were at an event, and the lady said, "Oh, and I sneak out."
Head of Channel 4.
Head of Channel 4 sneaks out to go and do her other life. And you challenged her, didn't you? What did you say?
A little bit. Yeah. So, yeah, she, no, I just asked why she doesn't, why did she feel like she had to sneak out?
Yeah, it's nothing to be ashamed of.
What was the...
Leaders leaving.
Leaders leave loudly. So, she seemed slightly embarrassed that she was... she made it work by kind of, sneaking out and to see the kids kind of thing. So...
Absolutely. So I've got a nice...
It's language, isn't it? We're talking about language, I think, before.
Yeah.
So it's the change in language there, I suppose.
But I also think there is a this comes back again to this confidence issue, and I think if you're somebody possibly who's been privately educated and you're affluent and you're white and you feel like you can be loud about certain things and you're not at risk. It's very different from a situation where, you know what I mean. So I think that's why we do have to be loud, but we also have to create spaces for other people to be loud and
Absolutely.
and to feel safe in that it's not going to be a risk for anybody to do that.
Also, isn't that the beauty of job share, though, that if you see a weakness in yourself, if you're not the salesperson, why don't you get the other part of your job share to sell you in? I really feel that, you get these freelancers who aren't tired because they're working with someone else. They're contributing loads more ideas because they're not tired. They're offering your company loads more than just one person, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have a nice slide talking about the future of flexibility, which I think talks a lot about what we were just saying. Commit to a quota of flexible contracts. I don't know if that's realistic.
No, it sounds a bit formal, that doesn't it?
But why not?
But one
push for
job,
that?
one job, that's it. Just try it, just one job. Yeah, that's the quota, is just one role in one production. Yeah, just, let's give it a go. And
train and educate transient staff. I mean, I think this is the whole reason ScreenSkills is about. I mean, I don't know what you guys, your experience is, but I know in my 17 years of working in television, I think I got a day's health and safety training, and that was it. And that is why bad habits happen. That's why we're doing our leadership and management training, because people come to these sort of, become leaders without any kind of idea of how to recruit in a diverse way. They have no experience of it. So more of that. And then as you say, I mean, these are some of the ones I think that you've brought up here, Lou. Bring the finest talent to your productions. I mean, I think, and this is, I mean, a lot of the chat I think has been going around parents, but it's not just a mum issue. It's not just a parent issue. I mean, I know the thing that's gone live today is about carers, people with other caring responsibilities.
That's right. We've always been very careful to include carers because they're part of the same population. They face a lot of the same challenges. But actually, they also face very specific challenges. Sometimes they're short-term and completely intense. Sometimes it's going to be long-term and sort of part-time, as it were. But one of the things that they very often can't do is, for example, get ad hoc, impromptu care, being helped out. So you can't, for example, say, oh, God, I've just got a job next week, and so I'm just going to find someone to look after my sister. Or, things like that need a lot of planning. And so there's something about, this is another side effect of the kind of casual labour force, is that last-minute hiring policies, which really don't work for the caring population. So it's also about, we're trying to make as much noise about them as possible and just say, actually, that's going to help a lot of people out generally. But, for the carers, that is something that's absolutely crucial for them. And we really need to be more careful in terms of how we employ people and the rights we give them. So we've just today, that was my cue to announce it. We've just today launching a new survey into carers in the industry. And now we know that this is a smaller population than parents, but we're so keen to reach this population and get their stories and get the numbers and find out how people manage being a carer in the film industry or have managed it. There are what's called sandwich carers if you're a parent and you're also looking after an elderly or unwell relative or partner or friend, or so there's a whole variety of things, and there's also part of the questionnaire is for people who are cared for because we want to hear their voices too. So it's raisingfilms.com, and have a look. The carer survey is there. Please share it as widely as possible because it's open now until the 19th of April. We launched the results in Carers Week, which is in June, and this is again going to be another piece of really important information about a very specific population, but it is also actually adding to everything we're all trying to do here, which is change the workforce to be more humane and to be more sustainable for people who are not that strange ideal person who's always been able to apparently have a job, which tends to be these white, able-bodied, cisgendered, middle-class men. But we're trying to open it up, and this is they're a great population, and they're going to add it's going to add a lot, I think, to this conversation. So I think please reach out. And it's a very difficult thing because people don't talk about caring. A lot of people don't even know that they're carers. They have an unwell relative they look after, and they're not aware actually the fact that they take every Tuesday off to take them to hospital, and to do that means that they are a carer. So it's a very it's something that it's unpaid work. It's social care that generally tends to be done by women, and it sort of is swept under the carpet in this country. So we're trying to make some noise about that now. Anyway, so that's that one.
Brilliant. We will share it. If in return. So we launched a flexible working survey last week around International Women's Day. Happy International Women's Day to everybody, by the way. And we have already had some really interesting responses. We'd love to get you involved as employers. If you're freelancers in the room as well, we want your responses too. There are two going in tandem. If you have a look at mediaparents.co.uk, click the blog button. Both of the links to the surveys are on there. So if you get in touch with us via the contact button, we can send you the information back, and we'll also be publishing it too.
Thank you. We're going to come to questions and answers in a minute, so have your questions ready and your pointy fingers ready to go. But I just wanted to kind of come to you guys just quickly, just like if there was sort of, what's your key message for employers how to kind of address this? What's the one practical thing they can do? Have a little think. If you Lou, you seem raring to go. Have you got one? All right, we'll go Lou. What's the one thing they can do?
Ask the question of why not. So why not employ job share? Why not let so-and-so work from home on a Thursday? And I think asking why not will really kind of throw up some actually quite interesting answers as to what people think, and it's just challenging this outdated perception of what flexible working is. So I think once you know why people won't do it, then you can work on that, and that is different on a person by person basis, and we work for different people all of the time. I have 10 jobs a year, and I work for probably 100, a team of 100 different people. So yeah, ask why not. That's mine.
I've already done mine.
Okay, that's about.
I think for me it's for the potential employee to say, I don't know. No. I'm not
Why
actually.
not me?
I did, yeah, exactly. No, for me it's like ask the question.
Yeah.
But then for the company to actually just listen.
Yes.
I seem to have held on to it. I wanted to say, just put it out there that you will work flexibly with people, and you're opening the dialogue, and then people will come to you, hopefully, with suggestions.
And I think what maybe I'm about to say is sort of, going at the sort of the structural heart of TV, where everything's such a rush, everything's so disorganized. Like, just put an extra week in your crewing up time, or 3 days. Just give yourself that little bit extra time just to think a little bit broader. Maybe I'm being completely naive, and maybe there's no money for it, but make some. This is important because it enriches the diversity of your program making.
Yeah.
Right? You can't tell. I think you can't tell stories that are relatable to all your viewers if it's the same people making the programs. You can't tell the stories if you're not those people. Yeah. So.
Okay, I've got one.
Yes.
Don't do the diversity work. Don't just pretend you're doing it. Actually change your work so that you're being diverse. There's so many people saying, oh, we've done it, and we did that survey, and we gathered the data, and we ticked all the boxes, and we did all that. It doesn't change anything. You have to look at how you're working. You have to actually invest, and it's going to cost you money and it's going to be painful, and I'm really sorry about that, but it's totally worth it. You know, we have to get 5-day weeks, we have to have 10-hour working days at some point. We've got to be honest about this, because it's, you know, we are destroying ourselves as an industry, and it's ridiculous. We could have a such richer industry if we were all kinder to each other as humans. And so just do it, invest in it. We are so worth it, and you know, we're all going to die. So
I'm not.
no, just, you know, make this worthwhile. This is totally, this is your life. This is your work is your life. You've got to just make it as well as you can.
On that note,
Sorry about that.
no, that was wonderful. On that note, I'm going to get Ryan, my colleague, to grab a microphone. Can we wrestle it out of your grip, Amy? Please, who's got a question? I can see straight at the back there. Maybe we can, and if you don't mind just waiting until Ryan comes to you.
Hi, sorry. I've actually got two questions because I think we've got different issues going on within film and within television. My first question is, within film, if the company has gotten funding, or the film is being funded through the BFI or through BBC Films or sometimes multiple investors, and it becomes a new company, they're setting up from scratch in order to run that feature, you know, where is this HR support going to come from? Can it be something that can be built into the funding that BFI is offering, that BBC is offering? Because those infrastructures do have HR. How can they support, you know, small features or independent film in being able to run those better employee
Totally
practices?
agree. So what you probably know about the diversity standards that the BFI have, and BBC and Channel 4 and BAFTA have all agreed to sign up to those. So I think, in a way, that's what they see as their thing. They can't really offer, once they sign off, they are the funders, they are not the producers. So that, you know, I can understand that there's tension there in that they can't do that. They can they can say, we want you to hire 15% BAME, but let's face it, you know, your gaffer drops out, you know, the week before, you know, you can't really be in control of these things. So there's a problem, but I totally agree that we need to have some kind of HR training, HR body that for a short-term level, and I think this is one of the things that ScreenSkills, I'm hoping, is really engaging with, actually.
Absolutely.
Is these short-term, whatever they're called, SVPs, PVs. I'm not a producer, obviously. That we get the training for those people, but we need to have some more HR work. And with our diversity checklists, you should have a look at them. They have it, and the unions offer BEC2, and there are a lot of really good stuff out there, but it's not regulated in any way, and there's no system of accountability. And yes, those organisations have them, but I think the diversity standards are doing a lot of the heavy lifting from as far as I can see, unless anyone in the room thinks differently. So I think that, it's a real shame with film that we can't do that. One of the big things that lots of people are trying to fight for at the moment, and I really wish it will happen, is to make the tax credit dependent on also being compliant with the diversity standards. So I know Lenny Henry and a group of people are really trying to push this, because obviously BFI, they really only fund a small portion of films made in this country, and so the ones that most people work on are the Star Warses and all the people who are coming to shoot here, the high-end TV that's coming to shoot here, getting the tax credit. The tax credit really shouldn't be given out unless they're hitting a certain way of working and a way of recruiting and a way of hiring. And I think there's a big movement, and if you look into what Lenny Henry's doing, he's really trying to fight for that as well. So, there's a difficulty over the fact that they are giving out lottery funds, and there's rules, for example, the BFI, and there's rules that govern what the lottery funds can be spent on. For example, you can't get childcare on a BFI-funded film on the budget, something we're trying to change, because lottery funding says you can't spend their money on, because I think they're worried that they are then going to be responsible somehow for the child. It's a very strange, complicated thing. But, so there are all these kind of strange strings attached to it. But I think the more we can train, if there was some kind of formalised industry body in the film industry that could sit up and say this. The FTC do have this helpline which has lawyers there, so they're there to answer any calls and any complaints. The helpline number is, I can't remember it, but FTC, the Film Television Charity, is amazing, and so that's great. But this is all ad hoc. It's not formalised, and that is frustrating. I'm with you.
Amy, did you want to have a quick?
I just wanted to make a point, not to be negative, thank you. But actually, the high-end TV drama course that we ran for returners, we asked tens of drama companies in television who was working flexibly for them. And the heads of production at Tiger Aspect actually job share. But apart from that, it kind of flatlined. So I would really throw down the challenge to you to say, can you bring job sharing in? Can you bring any time shifted hours into what you're doing if you're in scripted? And can you really shout about it? Because it's not part of the culture at all at the moment, is it? And shockingly so compared with factual TV, I thought.
And that was gonna. Oh, sorry. That was going to be my second question about television. Is how do you prevent, in shared or flexible working, how do you prevent yourself from working all the time and not being paid for those hours that you're working because you're on the end of the phone? Because we all know it's very, very difficult to switch off. And many women I know, not just in this industry, but after kids, they go back part-time and they're actually doing the 5 days worth of work, but they're being paid for 3.
Really? How to come to
Yeah,
you?
I think really that's the beauty of job sharing. I think there's less kind of pressure on you to be on the end of the phone 24 hours a day when you know on a Thursday and a Friday when you're not at work, somebody is doing that job for you. Somebody's answering those questions. So when I don't work on a Thursday and Friday, I genuinely feel like I'm not at work. So my job share will call if there is something, usually if the shit's hit the fan somewhere, or so she'll call if she needs to. But it's if I offered. I spoke to somebody in Manchester recently who was sold into the BBC as hi, so this is Jane, and she's the girl that I told you about who can do 3 days in 5. So the poor girl, that's what she's been doing. She's got 2 young kids at home, and that's how she's sold in, and she does it. So the kids go to bed. She's working 15-hour days. So with a job share, that just doesn't happen. So I genuinely, talk about it a lot, but that is a way of answering that question, really. I think anything over 3 days, if you do 4 days, you're more likely to do a 5-day working week and not get paid for it. And I think that happens across all industries. So, again, this is why that's that practical solution, which really does help personal lives for freelancers.
Sorry, would you therefore say then that your job sharing partner, one of their roles is to protect the non-working person?
I think you naturally do that, yeah. I think because I know that on Monday, she's going off with her daughter to do something. So I don't want to call her. Do I need to call her? Not really, no. But I know that if I did need to call her, I can be on the phone for an hour. She knows if I'm calling, I need to. But yeah, we respect that. She even covered a 2-week summer holiday for me. This kind of, that's another thing to go back to job sharing. That's another part of, I've never been able to take on a job when I've booked a 2-week holiday. So, yeah, we protect each other in that way. So I think that's, another.
Oh, hang on a minute, just let Ryan.
Oh gosh.
Sorry.
I used to work at the BBC staff and found them incredibly unhelpful, even though obviously I was very lucky and got maternity leave, paid, all that lovely stuff. When I said to them, when I went back and said, and what about flexible working? Nothing. Oh, well, no, actually, I've only been freelance, so it's probably 8 years ago, something like that. And they literally, the heads of production just looked at me and went, well, it would depend on the project, shrugging their shoulders. So it never happened. The minute I went freelance, the amount of accommodation I was given at various times for various reasons has been remarkable. But I've worked in entertainment and now I'm just do narrative. And I'm struggling to see how it will work in narrative. I can absolutely see how it works in the edit and APs and all in the sort of factual entertainment world. But on a narrative show, I'm slightly struggling to see how it would work. So I'd love to know if anyone's got any experience of it actually working. I do comedy, but I guess the same.
Director, you mean?
No, I'm head of production, and I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, I love your idea about. I'm afraid you are being naive because we get commission stuff with 5 minutes to go,
I know.
and we don't advertise production jobs. You just don't have the time, or dare I say the inclination. I mean, your director wants to work with X, Y, and Z, and so you go through your list and all of that. And I know it's not desirable, but time is so limited The idea, I mean, and we get, at the moment, you get commissioned to do online stuff, and you literally get 50p and a curly whirly to make something. So and you're lucky if you get the curly whirly. So you're asking favours all the time. And so the idea that you can then also think, oh, a job share would be good. What I'm loving hearing is the idea that the job share has come to you as a solution. The more that is the perception, the more I can see. I would not, I'd be really, really open to anybody coming to me with it as a solution. The idea that added to all the other jobs in a company of 14 people where I am HR and head of production and the line producer when it's a taster for 50p and a curly whirly, the idea that I can then go and find a job share person is just unrealistic. But I would love to know if anyone's got experience of it working in narrative.
I was just going to say, if the Daniel Blake case study, have a look at that, because it's so interesting. The editor has worked with Ken Loach for years, and he was just like, when this assistant came, who I don't think he'd worked with before, but 16 had worked with them, she came, and they wanted to keep working with 16, with the editor, the assistant. They wanted to train her up. They wanted to stay in the industry, and so she brought this other person who she hadn't worked with, but they'd kind of similar CV, and they went to the editor, and he was like, it's a great interview, actually. She just goes, I never thought it would work. I thought it would be a complete nightmare, and I didn't want to do it, and it was just, blah, blah, blah. Ken and I like to get there at 9:30. We have our lunch at this time. We leave the office at 5:30. We don't, mess around. There's none of that. And I couldn't deal with the idea. And he said, and it's been absolutely brilliant. And he, so it's a great example of someone saying, and proving how exactly what you're saying, if you come with this team, and the producer had said yes, and then the editor kind of had to be convinced, but actually discovered it was brilliant, and now he's been educated, so no doubt he'll be, so it's kind of that sort of thing. All this good practice begets good practice, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think a point to, we always now advise job shares to go as a team. So, I mean, I did it stupidly, like I bang on about this, but I actually put myself forward for a job a few weeks ago with 4 CVs, and I just thought, what am I doing? So I tested it, and it's the last thing she wants to do is pair someone up. So now, I've got kind of 6 or 7 jobs on my CV with, we've got reputation with the 2 job sharers. So, yeah, we go as a team, and you can't really question it. But I don't know, in as you were saying, I don't know of any experience for... Yeah.
Well, I think there are several jobs. We've also got experience. We've got story from someone in the art department in Harry Potter. I think art department is somewhere where it can work. I think probably actually something like in the production office, if you've got, but you might have to do a bit of overlap, I would imagine. I think there are some roles, and there are just some where you can't. Personally, for example, as a director, I can see hair and makeup why, assistants maybe, we used to actually on the levelling, we traded off the assistants occasionally, but my hair and makeup person is like one of my most important hires because they're with the actors all the time, so I would need to be really convinced that, it was, you know what I mean? But what could they practically do? If they had been doing it before and they came and they said to me, we work as a team, absolutely. But I mean, yeah. I mean, sure. But yeah, so if someone comes to me and they say, here we go, will you take a chance on me? And I'd be like, okay, but I think possibly maybe someone who, if it's a makeup artist I've worked with before and it's assistant they know and they want to help step them up, then they know that, you know what I mean? And I'm like, okay, I know you guys know each other. And because I trust my makeup artist and how they talk to the actors, because that's the fear area you've got. Then I would, take that risk, absolutely, that risk. It is, I think that's the thing. I think when you're making drama and, narrative stuff, there is that thing of you're telling a story, it's so expensive, and you're not going to get another day, and, so you're scared, and you want to make sure. I mean, I wonder if second ADs could yeah. But it exists somewhere. I mean, certainly crew like dollies and grips.
I've now a first AD where he argued successfully to work a 4-day week because they just had a baby, and his argument to the producer, who was very against the idea because they wanted their first on the floor, understandably, was that he had trained up his third, if he was sick or inconvenienced to work, the third would take over anyway. If he completely trusted him, why couldn't the production? And it worked perfectly well.
I mean,
But I think the issue is that we need to be far more vocal about those stories, because there aren't enough, especially in the film industry, there just aren't enough of them being talked about in the way it seems that they are in TV.
I mean, what we're hearing at ScreenSkills is obviously there's a massive boom in drama production. You know, TV is going, you know, there's another TV drama every 2 seconds, and it's getting harder and harder to get to get crewing up, to crew up that person that you always work with. So I'm kind of hoping that it's going to work in our advantage, that you're going to kind of be forced to think, okay, think more creatively about who you're going to hire, because your first choice, or maybe that person that you work with all the time, isn't available because there's 50 other dramas going on at the same time. Fingers crossed it'll come to our advantage. Yes, so let Ryan come to you guys. Maybe this lady first and then this gentleman.
I'm really keen to do some flexible working, but my concern, I work in production as a production manager and line producer. When somebody comes in and asks me a question and it's life or death and you have to know the answer right now, I have to have all that information in my head. If I'm only in for 2 or 3 days a week, how do I make sure that I know everything that's going on the whole time?
You just will, because you have to know that. So it's like in the edit, so, you know, our handover is on a Wednesday, so, you know, so I finish on a Wednesday. I have to know everything that's happened between Monday and Wednesday, and that could be half a bottle of wine and an hour and a half conversation, but I have to go in on Thursday knowing that I know why every decision was made, you know, who said what, why we're doing this. You know, a lot of work happens in 3 days. So if you get that opportunity to work the way that you want, you will make sure that you know everything that is going on, and that's the bit that you kind of don't get paid for. So, you know, you have to be prepared to have those handovers, and, you know, and that's it could be sometimes there's nothing to hand over, literally nothing, so it is no handover. That's quite rare, but sometimes it can be a really lengthy conversation. And I think, you know, you're so determined to make it work, and you don't want any holes in. You know, you want to be able to answer that question. So another thing is sharing an inbox. So even though you're not there, you know, there is obviously, you're always going to look at it when you're not in work, but so you're over everything. So there's a paper trail for everything, and you can see that. But yeah, I honestly, confidently, I can say that when you have that opportunity, you will make sure that you know everything that's there. And if not, it's a quick text.
Yes, the gentleman behind you.
I have numerous friends of mine at the moment are out of the industry, mostly being mothers. There's a dad as well, but raising a family. Now, one of the issues is that I'm finding is that because they're out of the industry, they're out of the industry. Mm-hmm. As in, it's like a door that they've shut because they've got other priorities at the moment. So one of the things I'm here for is to cascade the information I find back to them. But do you feel there's a bit of a marketing challenge for all of this amazing work that's going on, in that a lot of the people who could be benefiting from this, and a lot of the people who could be going, wow, this is all brilliant, what's happening, and this sea change that I feel is happening in the industry, how do you communicate it to people who aren't actually totally tracking it at the moment?
And then, actually, Naren, do you want to talk to that?
We do have a communication issue, actually. I think we need to be more joined up across the UK. So I do a lot of work with we're Film London, we're the London Screen Agency. And this Return to Work scheme we did was with like kind of partners like Northern Ireland Screen and Creative England, Screen Yorkshire. We all got together and write. Is that you, Screen Yorkshire?
Yeah.
Are you? Who are you?
Richard, no.
Oh, Richard, hello.
Yeah.
Hi, Richard.
Hey, Richard. So Richard got the word out, and we got applications from that Yorkshire region. And I think that's the key, actually, to use screen agencies a bit cleverly as well. You know, kind of really get the word out that we're on the same page. And we had amazing applications from all over the UK because of everyone going, actually, yeah, I see what you're doing in London. Yeah, sure. Why shouldn't people from, you know, Northern Ireland or, you know, Scotland come down and do the work or go up to?
Absolutely.
You know, we found local companies as well, like in Bournemouth, and we're doing some a returnship in Wales.
Wales, yeah, exactly.
So it's kind of, I think that there's a culture change, and I think we are getting a bit more joined up. And I think traditionally we've always been a bit like me, myself, and I, and now we're going, no, actually, we've all got the same agenda, right?
Go on, quick.
I'm just going to make a little point. We run these workshops called Making It Possible, which is a day thing for people who have been out of work or have maybe had a change in circumstances, had a child, not sure if they want to change their career a little bit but stay in the industry but do a different role, all those kinds of things. And it's a day long. It's led by a life coach who takes you through. It's all local, so you meet people in your area because you might now not, you know, you might have moved out. We did one in Scotland, we did one in Leeds, one in Bath. We've done a couple in London, and we're hoping to run a couple more this year. If you'd like to fund one in Yorkshire, we'd really love that. But honestly, they're really, really valuable. And did you do one? No, you didn't do one. No. There's someone I've talked to here who's done one. And honestly, the feedback we've had from them, people go, I feel like I'm human again. I feel like I'm able to lift my head up. I've confronted all my fears. I mean, it's full on, quite primal. You have to write down what you're frightened of and do all that kind of shit. But, it's really good because, and then we bring different people from the industry there as well to talk about what's happening, what are some of their ways back in. We really need to have a job sharing element to this. We should talk more about that, so that we kind of offer things and it just gives them an opportunity and a community, and the coach stays in touch with them, and you walk away with a kind of plan of what you're going to do next. So it's a sort of emotional as well as professional day of retraining that we're offering, and it's completely free, and we just have to find the money for it. But it's honestly, I think it's our kind of signature program, and it's so amazing. The people who've been on it have felt really transformed and have found their people. There's someone who came on one. She has now, through it, she's done. She went and shadowed on a major Amazon TV show series. She then ended up doing second unit directing on it because she was there and has just signed an agent. And this was all because she came along and met someone at one of these things. And so I think it's really important to have proper in real life stuff, but online stuff is great too. Raising Films have an amazing Facebook page if all your friends want to join it. There's a lot of chat there.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, so Raising Films, shame we've literally like, but what I would say is that the programs are there. These guys are all doing fantastic work. I think the key things that we've heard really is that we need to shout about the people that are doing it, and open our minds up to the fact that this can happen in your company and it is a success. So please join me in thanking our panelists, Hope Dixon-Leach, Louise Patel, Narain Kemp, Amy Walker. Thank you so much for all your wonderful questions. I hope you have more, and I think coming up we have our next panel, which is going to be with Michelle Moon Lim.